Hey everyone, it's Chris, and I'm today going to be talking about the Circle of the Sea subclass for the Druid. And what brought this video on right now is that I saw two videos within the last couple weeks. The first video trashed the subclass pretty much start to finish. It said it really sucked and, went through the features one at a time, made a bunch of complaints about all the different features, and I saw the video and I thought, wow, I really disagree with that. And I didn't think about it much after that. And then just the other day, I saw another video, and it was about the Circle of the Sea Druid, and also from someone within the community, and they trashed it too. And they made almost all the same points as the first video. And so then that really has me thinking, like, did I misjudge this subclass? So I made a list of all the criticisms of the subclass, and I thought about them, and yeah, no, I don't think they're right. I think they're very wrong. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the subclass. I am going to bring up the criticisms that were brought up in those videos, and I am going to explain why I disagree with them. Because I think this is a pretty solid subclass, and I do think a lot of their criticisms were just not good takes. So let's get into it. I should mention that the criticisms for the Circle of the Sea Druid include mechanical and power-wise criticisms, but they also include thematic criticisms and design criticisms as well. And in all three cases, I think they got it wrong. So I want to go through right now. We're going to start with circle spells. So I'm going to bring up on your screen right now the circle spells. So we have got Fog Cloud, Gust of Wind, Ray of Frost, Shatter, and Thunderwave gained at level 3. These are extra preparations. Then Lightning Bolt and Water Breathing are gained at level 5. Control Water and Ice Storm are gained at level 7. And then Conjure Elemental and Hold Monster are gained at level 9. Looks good to me, but there were criticisms. So I'm going to go through what those criticisms were. The first criticism, and both videos make this same criticism, is that there are 11 spells here, and 7 of them are already on the Druid spell list, so it's not very good. And I just wonder, compared to what? Compared to what? Because I look at the Circle of Stars Druid, and they get 2 spells. And one of them is not on the Druid spell list. So they get 1 spell that's not on the Druid spell list, and 1 that is. Then I look at the Circle of the Moon, and they get 6 spells. And how many of them are not on the Druid spell list? 0. They're all on the Druid spell list. And then I look at Circle of the Land. Now, Circle of the Land, their whole thing is extra spells. That's Circle of the Land, 80% of it is extra spells. I'd expect them to be the best at this. Nevertheless, you have all these different choices of spell lists you can choose, and you can switch, and that's great. However, no matter which one you choose, you will never have 11 extra spells known, and you will never have more than 4 spells that aren't on the Druid spell list. So, once again, this is bad compared to what? What are we comparing this to? I don't get it. And then I look at the spells, and there are good spells on here. Ray of Frost is a good spell. Shatter is a good spell. Thunderwave is a good spell. Lightning Bolt is a good spell. Water Breathing is a good spell. There are Control Water is a good spell. Hold Monster is a good spell. I don't get why there is the issue with this being a bad spell list. This is great. In fact, I would say of all the Druid subclasses, at least in the New Player's Handbook, this is in competition for the best with the Land Druid. I probably would put the Land Druid higher because of the versatility of being able to switch, but that is their thing. But compared to the other two, this isn't even close. It's way, way better. And if I look at previous Druid subclasses before the 2024 Player's Handbook, this is better than those as well. So, yeah, I don't understand that criticism at all. Maybe somebody can explain it to me. Why, 11 spells with 7 of them on the Druid spell list already is bad. What's it bad compared to? What am I missing? The second thing that was complained here was a thematic thing. And it was, here, water breathing. So the complaint was that A lot of subclasses that have kind of water themes will get water breathing as a class feature, and the complaint was, why are they getting it here as a spell instead of a class feature? And I don't get that either. Like, what does it matter? What does it matter whether I get my magical water breathing from source A or from source B? As long as I get it, I get it. And frankly, I'll take the water breathing spell over the ability to breathe water any day, because I can give it to all my allies as well, and it doesn't use a resource. It's a ritual. It lasts 24 hours. So, why wouldn't I want this instead? I mean, you could give me both, but that's redundant, right? So if you were going to give the Wild Heart Barbarian the ability to breathe water at level 6, great. But the reason they get that is because they can't cast water breathing. If you cast water breathing, you don't need it. So I don't get that criticism either. The final complaint that was made against this was Hold Monster. And the complaint wasn't that Hold Monster is a bad spell. The complaint was that Hold Monster was not thematic. And so I'll present you with Exhibit A. I assume that the reason you get Hold Monster is because you are freezing the enemy. If you think about it, this is a subclass that does cold damage, has cold centered features. If you read the description, it's about ocean storms, which are cold generally, depending where in the world you are, I suppose. But certainly, if you look at the way they've made this subclass, cold is part of it. So I assume the idea is you're freezing the enemy. So I think it is thematic. So circle spells definitely isn't a bad feature. And I would argue it's a fantastic feature gained at level 3. But it's not the only feature that the Circle Sea Druid gets. At level 3, they're also going to get Wrath of the Sea. So let's move on to this one. So the majority of the criticism of this subclass is centered on this feature. So we're going to have to talk about it a while, because I want to address those criticisms and explain why I disagree. So I'm just going to kind of go through them one at a time. But if you don't know what Wrath of the Sea does, use your bonus action. You get an emanation 5 feet around you. And then on your turn, when a creature is within your emanation, you can use your bonus action. And they make a Constitution save. And if they fail, they take damage, and you push them. You push them 15 feet. And the damage they take is a number of d6s equal to your Wisdom modifier. And the feature lasts 10 minutes, and you can use this bonus action on each of your turns throughout that 10 minutes for the one use of Wild Shape. So let's just go through the list of criticisms they have. They really hated this feature. So the first criticism, and they both made this same criticism, is that this is an all or nothing feature. Because, you use it, and if a creature makes their saving throw, nothing happens. However, this is not true. This is simply not true, because if we have a feature that we can use every single round, then presumably we're not going to do it for one round. We're not going to do it once. We're going to do it 5 times, maybe more. But let's say we do it 5 times. Is it possible that all 5 will succeed on their save? Yes, of course it is. Is it possible that all 5 will fail their saving throws? Yes, that's possible too. But it is far, far more likely that between 1 and 4 will make their save, and we're going to get a partial effect. And so this is a feature that, as long as you use it a few times, you're pretty much guaranteed to get a partial effect out of it. So it's definitely not all or nothing. The same way that Hypnotic Pattern's not all or nothing. You hit 5 creatures with a Hypnotic Pattern. Sure, all 5 might make their save, and sure, all 5 might fail their save. But it is far, far more likely that some will make their save and some won't. And this is the same thing. So it is definitely not all or nothing. I know what they're trying to say, but they're misrepresenting it. By saying this is an all or nothing feature, they're basically saying that if you use it, something's going to happen or nothing's going to happen, and that's not true. What is likely going to happen is it's going to work some of the time, it's not going to work some of the time, but you're going to use it lots and lots. So, you're going to get it working about half the time. Probably. Half the time is a guess, but I think it's a reasonable guess. Another thing that both videos said was that this isn't a good feature because you could use the Thunderwave spell. And if you use the Thunderwave spell and the creature makes their saving throw, they still take half damage. And then if they fail their saving throw, they still get pushed. Now, Thunderwave, of course, is an area of effect spell. It's not a big area, so I wouldn't expect to get many creatures with it, and I've often seen it used against a single creature. But you could potentially get multiple creatures, so we should take that into account. However, if we're going to compare, using Thunderwave against a creature versus using Wrath of the Sea versus a creature, the thing I would point out is that Thunderwave does 2d8 damage, save for half, so I'd expect it to do 9 points of damage, and once we account for the saving throw, which is also a Constitution saving throw, I'd expect 6 points of damage. If we look at Wrath of the Sea at level 3, I would expect 3 dice, that's 10.5, so a little over 5 points of damage when we use it, each time we use it. And once we get to level 4, I would expect to have 4 dice. So then it's going to be 14 points of damage, save for half, or work half the time. So about 7 points of damage. So this does about the same amount of damage as Thunderwave on average with a single use, except it is a bonus action and it is repeatable. And Thunderwave is a first level spell and an action. So you cannot continually repeat it, and it's a bigger, cost to your action economy. And finally, why just do Thunderwave instead? Why not do both? Why not do both? This uses a wild shape. Thunderwave uses a spell slot. We have wild shape uses and thunder and spell slot uses. And what's wrong with pushing more than one creature or pushing a creature multiple times? There might be reasons we might want to do that. So it's not like it's one or the other. We're creating a false dichotomy here. This, whether it's better or worse than Thunderwave, isn't really the question, though it's, in my opinion, much, much, much better than Thunderwave because we can do it over and over and over again. But either way, it's not like we have to give Thunderwave up in order to use this. The criticism actually makes no sense whatsoever. The next criticism against this feature was that it conflicts with Wild Shape. So that is, we have to use our Wild Shape in order to use this feature, and the criticism was, well, what if you want to use your Wild Shape to Wild Shape? Well, then you can't use it for this feature, and we only have 2 Wild Shapes. So if we use one Wild Shape on Wild Shape, then we only have one left to use this feature. And so then what do we do if there's another combat? I guess we can't use it. And they mentioned if you took a short rest, you could use it again. But how many short rests are you going to get? And I just wonder, did they miss the feature Wild Resurgence? Because at level 5, and level 5 is not very high, like we're talking a couple levels after we get this feature, we can spend a spell slot. Any spell slot, no action required, and get our Wild Shape back. So if we go into combat and we have no Wild Shape uses and we want to use this feature, it's no problem. We expend a first level spell slot, we use this feature, and it requires no extra action economy than otherwise. So I have to assume the creator just didn't know about Wild Resurgence, and I understand it is a new feature in the 2024 Player's Handbook. They're probably thinking of the 2014 Player's Handbook, where the Druids didn't have ways to recover Wild Shape, but they do now. So that's just not a valid criticism. Another criticism of this feature, so many criticisms, is that the damage is bad. The damage is nearly irrelevant. And I'll tell you what, when you first get this feature, I would expect your average Druid to have 3d6 and get 46 at 4th level. 3d6 average damage is 10.5. If we assume that they're saving half the time, then we're doing a little over 5 damage per round. That's about the same that we would expect from the starry form from the Archer, from the Stars Druid. Would do about the same amount of damage when we take into account chance to hit and chance to crit. In both cases, it's just a little over 5 points of damage around. And how much is 5 points of damage around in Tier 1? It's a lot. I've done a lot of damage videos where I really analyze damage of all the different classes, a bunch of different builds, and a Druid without a subclass should expect to do about 4 points of damage total in Tier 1. So we're talking about a bonus action add-on that more than doubles your damage. And, even once we get to level 4, then we're looking at 7 points of damage. That's as much damage as a fighter with a longsword does in tier 1, except we're only using our bonus action. We still have our action available to do something else. And this is not using our concentration, so we could even, concentrate on spells if we wanted to with our action. It's quite easy just to throw a cantrip on here, like a Starry Wisp or a Thorn Whip, and quite easily we can get this up to 9 points of damage around. That's more than a Moon Druid is going to be doing. But for a caster, going into melee, that's pretty good damage. We are keeping up with a number of the martials in those levels, at least. And that brings me to the next criticism. And the next criticism is that this forces you into melee, and that Druid shouldn't be going into melee. And I would just say, why not? Why would a Druid not go into melee? Druids, of all the spellcasters, there's only 2 that actually get proficiency with shields, and those are clerics and druids. And druids can get proficiency with medium armor at level 1. So they can have, scale mail and shield pretty darn easily right from level 1. Certainly by level 3, you're going to have scale mail and shield. And you can eventually get half plate and shield, and that's an 18 or 19 armor class, depending on which armor you're wearing. That's a pretty good armor class. And I haven't even talked about other ways we might boost our defenses as well, but that's just the base. So why wouldn't they go into melee? In terms of spellcasters that would go into melee, clerics and druids are probably the 2 best at it. So this idea that, you can't go into melee, I think goes along with this idea that no caster should ever go into melee, which I think is just wrong. It's just simply not true. You certainly don't have to go into melee with druids, and you certainly don't have to go into melee with clerics, but you can. You absolutely can. Okay, and that brings me to the final point, because this one really really shocked me, is the claim was made that, yes, there are some druid spells that actually might put you in melee. Like if you take Conjure Minor Elementals, you have to get in close. If you take Conjure Woodland Beings, you only have a 10-foot emanation, so you're going to have to move in close and get you into those melee ranges. So then you might have to actually go into melee with your Druid, but Wrath of the Sea does not work with Conjure Woodland Beings. They conflict. And I don't get this. Please explain to me how they conflict. Because one is an action to set up, the other is a bonus action to set up. We can set them both up on the same turn. At level 7, when we get Conjure Woodland Beings, we have a 10-foot emanation for Wrath of the Sea, so it matches the emanation of the Conjure Woodland Beings, and instead of doing, 5d8 damage when we move into an enemy, we're going to do 5d8 damage plus another 4d6, plus then we're going to toss them back out of the emanation afterwards, which is good. That sounds to me like they are a match made in heaven. If I wanted to make a druid that focused on Conjure Woodland Beings, I would very strongly consider Circle of the Sea because of how well Wrath of the Sea combines with Conjure Woodland Beings. They just seem to be made for each other. It might even be intentional. Because, one's using your bonus action, one is not. One's using your concentration, one is not. I mean, it just seems like everything one needs, the other one doesn't need. So they fit together absolutely perfectly with an identical size emanation. So I don't understand it. I don't get it. Let me know down below what I'm missing, how these things are in conflict with each other. They don't seem to be in conflict at all. Okay, so all of that was the complaints about Wrath of the Sea, and I don't get any of them. I don't get a single one of the complaints they made against this. This is a pretty good feature. I will complain that I don't want features that use up my bonus action every round because I like to be able to do other things with my features. That doesn't make it a bad feature, though. It does good damage. It pushes enemies, which is helpful. Druids can absolutely go into melee. This is going to do as much damage as the Starry Form's Archer form at level 3 and more damage by level 4. And so it'll be the top bonus action damage possibility for a druid that doesn't use concentration in these levels. So, I do not understand the criticism. But let's move on. Level 6, Aquatic Affinity. So this gives you 2 things. The first thing it does is it increases the size of your Wrath of the Sea emanation to 10 feet. So it was 5 feet, now it's 10 feet. And it also gives you the ability to swim. So the swimming feature, I mean, I guess I understand why, you're going to give Circle the Sea Druid swimming, but it's only useful if you're underwater. So that's most of the time, I assume you're not underwater. So most of the time, that feature doesn't count for anything. So how good is the emanation increasing from 5 feet to 10 feet? I don't know how good it is. I mean, I guess certainly if you're using it with Conjure Woodland Beings, it's convenient for it to be the same size. And if you want to skirmish, you could potentially move in and out as long as the creature doesn't have reach, and then do your stuff to them and get away. I guess there's that. For the most part, I don't think it's a big deal. And so, I agree that the level 6 feature is underwhelming. What I don't agree is that they haven't had anything good yet up to now. At level 3, I think they've already had 2 fantastic features. So, level 6, not so great. And this reminds me a little bit of the Elements Monk. The Elements Monk, I think, is maybe my favorite of the subclasses for Monk now. Their level 6 feature is not so great. But they get such good stuff at level 3 that I don't care. And that's the way it is here with Circle the Sea Druid. Of course, I would rather have an impressive feature at level 6, but I still think they're in good shape at level 6. I mean, just remember that they're druids, so they're full spellcasters. Level 6, they're into 3rd level spells. They're doing okay. Okay, so remember that spells are class features too. So they are getting good stuff, but yeah, the level 6 feature, I mean, I compared it to the other Druid subclasses, and I do think it is the weakest of the 4 in the new player's handbook. I mean, Moon Druids are getting a bonus to their concentration saves. That's quite nice. Land Druids are getting additional spell casting, which is quite nice. And Circle of Stars Druid gets a reaction where they can add or subtract a little bit from various tests. And that's quite nice too, and I think all 3 of those are better than the level 6 feature of Circle of the Sea. That said, I think the level 3 features of Circle of the Sea are better than most of their level 3 features, so I do think it somewhat evens out. I want to mention that one of these videos mentioned that, we should be comparing this to things like the Paladin getting Aura of Protection at level 6. No, we shouldn't. No, we shouldn't. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. We are really comparing apples and oranges. This is a druid, right? You know what the paladin doesn't get at level 6? 3rd level spells. We have 3rd level spells. These are different classes. And yes, the paladin aura protection is super, super powerful and happens to be gained at level 6. And you can compare it to any level 6 feature in the game and go, wow, yeah, this must suck because it's not as good as paladin aura protection. What does that mean? Doesn't mean anything. So I don't get that criticism. That brings us to level 10. So at level 10, our Wrath of the Sea improves. So when we use it, now we are going to gain a fly speed equal to our walking speed, and we're going to get 3 damage resistances. And these last for the duration of our Wrath of the Sea. And both videos said that they figured that this was the first good feature that the Druid got, and the Sea Druid got. And I disagree because, as I mentioned before, I think they've had multiple good features already. However, I do agree that this is a good feature. What I disagree with is that then both videos went back on it and then started trashing this feature. And every way they trashed it, every way they criticized it, I disagreed with every single one. So let's start going through it. The first criticism, and both videos made this criticism, is that this is not a thematic feature. The resistances, of course, are thematic, but the flight is not thematic because Circle of the Sea Druid. And I just wonder. I wonder whether either of these YouTubers read the subclass description, because I'm going to bring it up for you right now. It says, Circle of the Sea. Become one with tides and storms. The first sentence, Druids of the Circle of the Sea draw on the tempestuous forces of oceans and storms. And what is it about storms? Well, they're up there. Storms are over your head and they come down, and that's why fly. Okay? That's why fly. Read the first sentence of the subclass. It tells you why this is a thematic feature. Then both videos compared it to other flight features and said the other flight features were better. The first video said that the Circle of Stars Druid feature was better because you get hover. It also gives you a fly speed of 20. So it also doesn't give you any resistances. I don't get the criticism, right? Even if we say that 20 feet with hover is better than your walking speed without hover, if I was to give you that, then you still have to explain why it's better than flight speed without hover or walking speed without hover plus 3 resistances, which wasn't done. We're just supposed to ignore the fact that this is only half the feature. The other one compared it to the Tempest Cleric, because the Tempest Cleric happens to get a feature called Stormborn, where they get flight. And we are told in that video that the Tempest Cleric can use the flight feature all the time. And that's not true. It says right here that you can't use this feature if you're underground or indoors. Now, I don't know how often these people have played Dungeons & Dragons, but in my experience, that most of the time, you are either underground or indoors. So, the Tempest Cleric can use their feature, I would say, less than half the time. While the Circle of Sea Druid can use theirs whenever they need it. But because of Wild Resurgence, they can use it pretty much as often as they want, and it lasts 10 minutes, and it's a bonus action to activate. So it's not a problem. You can, if you want flight, you got flight, and you're going to have it as long as you need it. So it's just better, even without the resistances, and that doesn't even account for the fact that he's comparing it to a 17th level feature. I would expect the 17th level feature to be better, but here I would say the 10th level feature was better. Another criticism that was brought up is that flying isn't that great at level 10 because you can just create brooms of flying for your entire party. And I just talked about this in my last video. The crafting items the crafting magic items portion of the Dungeon Master's Guide, we have been instructed by the designers to have as the DM purview, and the DM decides what to unlock, when to unlock it, which items you can create, and which ones you can't. That's the DM's decision, not a player choice. Treating it in these videos like it's a player choice, I think sends out a bad message. Sends out a bad message to players that they should trample their DM to bully them to get what they want out of the Dungeon Master's Guide, which isn't the way it's supposed to be. I think it creates an unhealthy situation between players and DMs, and I just really don't approve of that kind of messaging. Oh, and the final criticism, this was in the most recent video. They said that it is weird that this is the first time it feels worth it to use a feature where the original point of it has become largely irrelevant. So at level 10, Wrath of the Sea is doing 5d6 damage. And I'm just curious what level 5d6 damage became irrelevant. How many d6s of damage do you need at level 10 for it to be relevant as a repeatable bonus action? I mean, if this was an action, like if it took an action on your turn to maybe do 5d6 points of damage, I get why that would be considered largely irrelevant. That's not the case. This is a bonus action. This is not using your concentration. Doing 5d6 damage probably about half the time for up to 10 minutes. That, at what point did that become irrelevant? At what point would it become relevant? How much damage would it need to do? Because I'm just going to put up here, this is the Crown of Stars spell. Now, the Crown of Stars spell is a 7th level spell. And what it does is it gives you some motes, 7 motes, that you can fire as a bonus action at a target. And if you hit, they do 4d12 damage. I would expect this to do about 19 points of damage with your bonus action each round. I would expect Wrath of the Sea to do about half that. And Wrath of the Sea is using a wild shape or a first level spell slot if you're out of wild shapes. Crown of Stars is taking a 7th level spell slot. Now, if I can do half the damage of a 7th level spell with a first level spell or equivalent to a first level spell without any downside whatsoever, in both cases we're talking about bonus action to use, no concentration. That sounds like a fantastic deal to me. And the Crown of Stars is going to run out after 7 rounds. Well, the Wrath of the Sea can keep on going and going and going. So, yeah, I do not understand why this would be considered largely irrelevant damage. Much like I don't understand why 3d6 is considered bad damage as a bonus action at level 3, or why 4d6 is bad damage as a bonus action at level 4. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like when you get people saying that, Polar Master is really good because it gives you a bonus action attack, or Dual Wielder is really good because it gives you a bonus action attack, I'd point out that Wrath of the Sea does more damage than either of those. And it's also using your bonus action. And you can use it just all the time. And you don't need a feat. I don't get it. I do not understand at all. So, yeah, if anyone can explain it to me, let me know down below. But what I don't get is why both these creators would start out by saying this is a good feature, and then both of these creators, both of them, then go out of their way to explain why it's not a good feature. Like, tell us it's a good feature and then explain why, or tell us it's a bad feature and then explain why. But why would you start out one way and then go the other way? Just tell us what you think and explain it. I don't understand why a creator would tell you something's good and then actually it's bad. I would never do that. I don't understand it. Anyway, we're going to go on to level 14. Level 14 allows you to use your Wrath of the Sea on somebody else. There's lots of fun ways that this can be used, because it doesn't just, it's not just your allies we're talking about. It can be used on familiars and all kinds of fun stuff. Or you can use it on yourself and an ally. And they get all the benefits. They get the flight, they get the resistances, they get the emanation with the damage and the pushing. They get all of it. And both of these creators said this was a good feature, and I was waiting with bated breath for them to say, actually, it's bad. But they didn't. They didn't. They both agreed it was good. They just agreed it was way too late to get a good feature. But here's the thing. I agree, this is a great feature. Oceanic Gift, I think it's hard to argue that this isn't a great feature. But I think it's hard to argue that the circle spells aren't a great feature. And I think it's hard to argue that Wrath of the Sea isn't a great feature. And I think it's hard to argue that Stormborn isn't a great feature. And my evidence is that they both tried to do that, and they both gave a bunch of arguments that I thought were really, really weak. Really, really weak. And so I hope I've, addressed those arguments adequately in this video. If any of you think that, I've missed something, that, actually you missed this thing or this thing, then let me know in the comments down below. But in my opinion, Circle of the Sea is a good subclass. I don't know if it's the best Druid subclass, because the Druid subclasses are extremely well balanced against each other now, which is great. I look at Circle of the Land, I look at Circle of the Sea, I look at Circle of the Moon, I look at Circle of the Stars. These are 4 very well balanced subclasses. And so, I do think that Circle of the Sea gets a weaker 6th level feature, but I think they get a better 3rd level feature, or suite of 3rd level features, I should say. And I think their high level features are really good. So I think overall, they're pretty well balanced against the others. And so, yeah, I don't understand the criticism. And if any of you can understand it better than me, by all means, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, till next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.